Hey guys, it's Tommy with my assistant Bitey up here in the corner, who's going to introduce herself in just a minute. But I wanted to tell you first that we're doing a step challenge at work, and I thought this would be a really great example to show you guys how a histogram works and how it can be better than a standard column chart. So before we get started, let Bitey jump on and just say one or two words, and then we'll get into the analysis and learn how to build a histogram.
Hey everyone, I'm Bitey. I'm just here hanging out in the corner of the screen and super excited to help Tommy show you the magic of histograms. So we're going to take those step challenge numbers and turn them into a chart that actually makes sense.
All right, so the first thing we're going to do is just show you the data. Like I said, I just pulled the data. It's like 50 people I work with and all of their step challenges. And the first thing I learned about this data is how much people really do lie about how much they walk. So the first thing we did is just sorted the columns alphabetically and did a standard column chart. Now, you can't really tell much by this. It's about as chaotic as the lunchroom at noon, but it's usually the first start for things. The next thing we did to make it maybe a little bit better was take that column chart and sort it by the number of steps people took. So this is a little bit better, but you can't really tell where people are grouped up or how many, are doing a similar amount of steps and things like that. So before I show the histogram view, Bitey, would you like to chime in on any of those first two charts?
Absolutely, Tommy. Let me jump in for a sec. So yeah, that first alphabetical chart is basically just like throwing all the data into a blender and hoping it makes sense. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. And the second chart, where you sort by steps, is a little better. You can see who's at the top and who's at the bottom, but it still doesn't tell you the overall pattern. It's kind of like sorting your music playlist by length. You know which songs are longest, but you still don't know the vibe of the whole playlist. So that's where the histogram comes in. It's going to show you exactly how the whole group is distributed across those step ranges.
Awesome. Thank you, Bitey. So now let's look at this third graph, and this is the histogram. And as we kind of talked about, what a histogram does is it takes numerical values. This doesn't really work with dimensional or categorical data, but we're going to take numerical data values and place them in bins or buckets that are very similar. In the case of our step challenge, we're using increments of 2,500 steps. So how many people did 0 to 2,500? How many 2,500 to 5,000? How many 5,000 to 7,500? And so on. And so that's what our histogram, you can see it really gives us a good picture of how much people are walking. Bitey, you want to jump in and add to that at all?
Absolutely, Tommy. I'd love to add a little bit. So you nailed it. This histogram is basically giving you a big picture snapshot. Instead of 50 individual columns like we had before, now you just have a handful of bars that show you how many people fall into each step range. It's like taking a messy pile of puzzle pieces and suddenly seeing the whole picture. And the best part is you can quickly see where most people are clustering, like if they're mostly in the mid-range or if there are a few outliers. So this is why histograms are such a powerful tool.
Awesome. So now that we know what a histogram is, why don't we dive right into building a histogram, okay? So if you've got this example file, you can follow along or just make up your own data. But we're going to go over to the Create Histogram tab, and that's going to have all the data we're going to use to create this histogram. In pure definition, all you need to create a histogram chart is one column of numeric data. You don't even need dimensional data. But if you have thousands of rows, you can add in things like sales regions or states or what grade people are in, things like that, because you could then do multiple histograms based on the categories. For tonight, we're going to keep it super simple and just use the one column of fact data with the people's names. What we need to do now is just select our data. So you can just select any one cell in the data or do Control A to select everything. It's really going to turn out the same. Then we'll go to Insert. And over in charts, you've got column charts, but you also have this other section here that has statistical charts. Technically, we call a histogram a statistical chart. I kind of think it's more like a column chart, a special column chart, but that's where it is. We'll click on the histogram, and it comes up with some defaults for us. The automatic bin sizes, or buckets, if you will, and a chart layout. Let's change that chart layout really quick first so we can be a little bit consistent. So I'll click my drop down here and change the format. And then where the magic happens is defining our bins or how we want this data grouped, okay? So we're going to right click on the axis, the X axis down here, and hit Format Axis. And then what you're going to see over on the axis options tab is a new category, bins. They can be automatic by category, bin width, or number of bins. So right now it's automatic. Excel just took a guess, which we love that it does that. But now we're just going to set the bin width, and we're going to set it at 2,500. We'll talk about overflow and underflow in a minute, but that's really all you have to do is set your bins up. And hit tab. And now Bitey, do you want to explain how those bins work now that we've set it to 2,500 steps?
Absolutely, Tommy. So now that we've set those bins to 2,500 steps each, let's talk about what that really means. Basically, each bar on your histogram now represents a range of 2,500 steps. So one bar will show how many people walked between 0 and 2,500 steps. The next bar will show how many did between 2,500 and 5,000 steps, and so on. It's just like putting your data into neat little buckets. And this is super helpful because now you can instantly see which ranges have the most people. You don't have to count individual columns anymore. You just look at the tallest bars and you know exactly where most of your team is landing in terms of their step counts.
Now, one thing you might notice is that the bins don't start at 0. This is a little quirk in Excel. It's going to start at the lowest value for that bin. So what we want to do is we're going to have to insert kind of a dummy variable to get this to 0 to 2,500. So I can just come up here and I can do an insert. That's a trick in our data. Shift cells down and that will automatically get added. And we'll just call this bin bottom and make that 0. Now all our buckets span 2,500 steps, but they also start at 0. So it's a little bit nicer that way. One other thing that you can do is if you go back into those properties, let's say in our steps we only wanted to show up to 10,000 steps. So we could go here, we could go back to our formatting area on our x-axis, and in the overflow bin, we could say, hey, everything over 10,000 is going to be grouped together. You see what it did? It just took that last group, because sometimes you might have a lot of data that stretches out over miles and miles and miles, and now we've just put them in an overflow bin. So that's really all there is to it. Bitey, any last words before we sign off?
Absolutely, Tommy. Just to wrap it up, you've done a perfect job showing how to get that histogram set up and how to handle those bins. And yeah, if you want to cap it off by grouping all the big numbers into an overflow bin, it just keeps things nice and tidy. As for other data sets, histograms are fantastic anywhere you want to see a distribution. Think about test scores in a class, ages of people in a survey, or even things like wait times in a call center. Anywhere you have a bunch of numbers and you want to see how they stack up, a histogram is your best friend. So thanks for having me, and I hope everyone has fun making their own histograms.
Awesome. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys next time.